G'day and welcome back to RC Model Reviews. Today I'm looking at the Runcam Eagle. Now lots of people have already reviewed this camera. I left my review a bit later because I wanted to find out as much as I could about this little camera. It seemed almost too good to be true when I tried it out because it really does perform astonishingly well in many but not all circumstances. And it's like the best FPV camera on the market for most applications. It's just so damn good. Let's unbox it. There you go. Didn't take long, did it? There it is. It's only marginally bigger than the HS1177. Here's an HS1177. There's the Runcam Eagle. You notice also that the lens is a bit bigger. It's actually not the lens, it's just the glass bit, I think. So it's pretty comparable in terms of width and height. You know, not much difference there. So it is an easy replacement for an HS1177 if you want to replace one with it. But why would you want to replace your HS117 with the Runcam Eagle? Because the Eagle is more expensive. Well, I'm going to cut straight to the chase and tell you that this camera, the Runcam Eagle, has the very best wide dynamic range I have ever seen in any live FPV video camera. That's bar none. It is just light years ahead of even the really popular HS117, which is a camera, a CCD camera based on the Sony Superhead 2 sensor and chipset, which has wide dynamic range. Talking wide dynamic range, this thing is about 5 times better in terms of its wide dynamic range. And it's a CMOS sensor in this thing. This is actually an interesting camera because it's really what we've got here is like an HD recording camera but without the recording bit. So it's got a CMOS sensor in 16:9 format, and I'll get on to more about that in a moment. And it has a separate logic board with a digital processor chip. Now, we've seen digital processing chips before in live FPV cameras. The Sony FEOV was a good example, and the big downside of the FEOV was that it just put too much latency into the equation because the digital processing took so much time and the conversion back to analog. It was a nice camera for flying fixed wing, but just wasn't practical for miniquads and things like that. We need a fast camera. Now, this of course does have its own latency, and I've spoken about that in a previous video, but the latency is much lower and it's flyable with that amount of latency, unless you're a real Top Gun, I suppose. So this camera is just like everything you'd want in a camera and more. Of course, it's more expensive than the HS117. This camera is going to run you, I think, $55 at the moment, and that's quite a bit of dough to throw at a camera. But if you want the best results, you've got to spend the money, I think. I'll be using this camera in all my fixed wing and probably quite a few of my rotary wing models from this point forward, because the difference is just night and day, quite literally night and day. And this is interesting because Runcam have had some hits and they've had some misses. The Runcam Swift, which is really an HS1177 with some different default settings, that's a beauty little camera. It's really nice, like most HS1177s. The Runcam Owl is quite a nice night camera, or not night camera, it's a low light camera. Okay, it's great for those low light conditions just after sunset. I don't like it much for daytime conditions because the colors are all screwy due to the lack of infrared block. But certainly for the evening flying, the Runcam Owl is quite good. The Runcam Owl 2 was a bit of a disaster, I'm afraid. I had one here to review, and honestly, the light handling is just so poor. It's just terrible. If you look on the net, you'll find lots of people bitching about the Runcam Owl 2, because it is just, or Owl Plus, whatever it is, I can't remember what it's called. I've got one here somewhere. I'd have to find the box. Anyway, yeah, the follow-up to the Runcam Owl, yeah, it really didn't fly at all for me. But this, they've redeemed themselves by now making what, as far as my tests so far indicate, is probably the best FPV live camera on the market. And it's only, you know, $10-15 more than, or maybe $20 more than, you know, a standard 1177. So great stuff from Runcam. Now, I'm going to go through the pros and cons so we know what we're looking at here, because it's not a perfect camera. Firstly, I like the fact you get some instructions. So many of these cameras these days, these FPV cameras, come with like the CCTV, because a lot of them have been modified CCTV cameras. Some of them aren't even modified. They're just closed circuit television cameras that have been put in a box and called an FPV camera. Runcam have developed this line of cameras specially for FPV, and they've done things like put instructions in. Now, this might look really simple. Gosh, who wouldn't know how to wire their FPV camera with its 3 wires to a video transmitter? But hey, some people don't. If you're getting into the hobby, you know, this stuff's pretty daunting. A simple diagram like this can make all the difference between being able to use your brand new camera and not being able to use your brand new camera because you don't know what you're doing. So thumbs up to Runcam for making it easy. And they've made it very easy with that. Also, oops, that's disappeared. the quality of the accessories they throw in, like this is just the video lead, right? But it's silicon wire. It's silicon wire. That is just so much better than the crap-ass plastic wire. I mean, here's a Runcam Swift. This is plastic wire. It's got PVC insulation. Look, you bend that and it stays kinked, and it frays and it can break, especially around the little connectors there where it's crimped. Often it breaks away. This stuff, brilliant. You bend it and it springs back. It's silicon. You know, it's really good quality wire. That is fantastic. Also has the little joysticky thing. Yeah. Pretty common these days. Although a lot of the cheaper cameras just have a PC board. This is quite nice because it's not going to break in your toolbox. One downside I found on these is that the connector for the OSD is actually on a really stiff wire, and I think Chris from iForce 2D noticed this too. So on really stiff wire, so getting this in, if you've got your Runcam Eagle already mounted in your mini quad, it's a bit of a pain in the backside. For example, as you can see here, I've got a prototype one they sent me. This is, again, you can see it's a magnesium case, metal case, which is great. And we'll see later that doesn't effectively stop all the noise coming out, but it's not too bad. But you can't get the plug in there because it's so wide and big and bulky, and so the wires are so stiff. It's a bit of a pain. It'd be nice if they had it like the Runcam Swift, which has just 2 wires and they're easy to get in. But hey, that's a small thing. Now it comes with a little protractor bracket here. As you can see, this little bracket has got little degrees marked in it. So if you've got it in a mini quad, you can angle it up, you can measure it. Oh, it's a bit gimmicky, but anyway, this bracket's got 2 screws and it goes into threaded holes on this metal case. So that's quite good. The screws, you know, that's quite good. You can set it to the angle you want. I'm still not impressed with the strength of this bracket. It's very thin aluminium and it will bend, and if you're flying in a mini quad and you have collisions, it'll break along here, but it's better than nothing. I've used a lens mount on my barrel mount on my mini quad that I've been testing this out on, and that seems to work just fine. But there you go. I mean, it's okay. It's okay. But they also provide you with a box of screws with which to bolt everything together, and that's kind of cool because they even include, wait for it, bonus, a little hex wrench. Isn't that nice? So yeah, you get everything you could want, and you also get another lead which is you can use for just doing some tests, which I've been doing to test the emissions of this camera. And that lead has an RCA connector and a barrel connector, so you can plug it in, hook it up to an AV, just an ordinary screen with an AV input, and fart around with the little twiddly box and set your settings if you want to. But out of the box, the default settings aren't too bad, although I have found that there are pros and cons. Now, the fantastic dynamic range is one of them. The downside of having a fantastic dynamic range is the picture doesn't pop as much as a CCD camera. By that I mean it all looks a little washed out. The blacks are grey, not black, and the highlights are not quite as, it's just a lack of contrast. There is no contrast control with the little twiddly arm thing, the little joystick. There's no control on the OSD for adjusting the contrast. That is fixed. You can turn the wide dynamic range off and on, but I don't know why you'd want to turn it off, but there is no ability to adjust the contrast, which is a bit of a shame. Nevertheless, if you wind the brilliance down a little bit and you wind the colors up to full saturation, it doesn't look too bad. And I forgive anything like that because the color renditions are very accurate. The white balance is truly good. I've noticed with the HS1177s, if you use the auto white balance, it does drift a lot, depending on if you're looking at the ground and you've got a green background, it'll drift into the blue. And if you look at the sky with a blue background, it'll drift into the green. So yeah, this is a much more stable white balance, which is brilliant because it looks more realistic. The image looks quite realistic when you're looking through your goggles. It's more of a, you really do think that you're actually looking out a window and not looking through a camera, which is quite important. So yep, as I say, pros and cons. The pros are great, wide dynamic range. The cons are, it looks a little washed out. Now Runcam sent me a couple of units to review, and one is a 16.9 and one is a 4.3. You might think, what? 16.9? Yes. Now if you have a set of goggles like the Sky Zones and quite a few others, they have a 16.9 display. That is to say, they're like your big screen TV at home. They're much wider than they are tall. This is the way video works these days. And if you view a normal 4.3, which is like the old-fashioned TV sets that are almost square, the old glass tube ones, if you view an image designed to be displayed on that using a 16.9 screen, it tends to get a bit stretched sideways. Now the big thing is, I never notice that when I'm flying, and most people I don't think notice that when they're flying, but Runcam have said, hey, well, you're using 16.9 goggles or screens, you might as well have a 16.9 camera. And I thought, hey, that's really, really good. I was surprised no one had done it earlier, actually, but Runcam have done that. They've made it so that we've got a 4.3 version for people who have got square displays or square goggles like the Dominators. Dominator, I forget what it is. One of the Dominators is square. I think one of the others 16.9. Anyway, if you've got a square display, this camera here is supposed to be the bee's knees for you. And if you've got Sky Zones or something else with a 16.9 display, then you can use this one. The benefit being that if you use the right camera with the right display, if you're looking at a circle, it will look like a circle. If you use the 4:3 camera with 16:9 screen, it'll be stretched horizontally. It'll be elongated into an oval. And conversely, if you use the 16:9 camera with a 4:3 display, it will be squashed horizontally and it'll look like it's stretched vertically. Now, I thought this is great, brilliant. So I threw the 16:9 version of this camera into my mini quad. Ta-da, like that, and away we go. And I set the angle the same as I normally have my angle set, and I was bitterly disappointed because the horizon has disappeared. What's happened? I normally have, a lot of angle on my camera. I usually have a bit more than that actually, but with the same angle, using the 16:9 camera, the horizon disappears. Put the 4:3 camera in, and the horizon comes back. What the hell's going on? If we look at the boxes, here's a clue. Try and get these centered for you. The 4:3 camera has a field of view of 140 degrees. The 16:9 camera only has a field of view of 130 degrees, so effectively it becomes a wider angle lens. Certainly in the vertical orientation, you see more vertically with the 4:3 than with the 16:9. So what's happened is, instead of taking a 4:3 image and adding extra stuff to the side, they've taken a 4:3 image and they've chopped the top and bottom off, cropped the top and bottom to give you a 16:9 image. So you're losing information, valuable information if you're a mini quad flyer, very valuable information indeed. I've overlaid these two videos here to give you an idea of what happens. Now, you can see one is the 16:9, one is the 4:3, and you can see that instead of adding stuff, they've taken stuff away. So I would not recommend the 16:9 camera for mini quads because you're losing too much of your vertical information. And even if you angle your camera up further so you can still see the horizon, then the problems we have landing with a high camera angle become even worse because the ground will disappear as soon as you level out. So yeah, you want a good field of view. The 16:9, nah, it's no good as far as I can see for mini. If you're a nana, and I'm still a nana, but I'm not that much of a nana. If you're going to be flying with any sort of degree of speed, then you'll really get better results from the 4:3 with its greater field of view. And as I say, I don't notice the stretching that takes place when you use a 4:3 camera with a 16:9 screen, so I'm not concerned. However, if I'm going to be flying fixed wing, I'm probably going to use that 16:9 with my Sky Zone goggles because it's nice to have that wonderful panoramic view and no stretching involved. So yeah, I mean, choose according to your type of flying, whatever craft you fly, and according to the type of goggles that you use. So there are some other issues with the video quality that you may be interested in. Now, it says it's a 800 TV line display, which is quite sharp, and it does in fact look quite sharp, but because it's digitally processed, what's happened here is that we don't have the nice smooth lines quite often that you get with a CCD camera. Now, CCDs, all the processing's analog, so everything is kind of, analog, I like to call it fuzzy. It's still sharp, but diagonal lines look like a straight line of even thickness. With this camera, if you play with the sharpness controls and get it wrong, then you'll end up with aliased lines. What does aliased lines mean? Well, instead of being a nice diagonal, they have jaggies in them. And hopefully I've got some examples of that in the footage I've taken with this camera recently. And if there are, I'll put them on the screen now. And you can see that diagonal lines have kind of look like they're made up of short sections of lines slightly stacked on each other at each end. And that can detract from the quality of the image, but you don't notice it when you're flying, and you can actually get rid of that by adjusting some of the on-screen menu controls, the sharpness controls. And there are two types of sharpness control. There's an overall sharpness and an edge detect, and by tweaking those you can get rid of that, although you lose a little bit of the crispness, but it depends what you're after. This camera is quite flexible, so you can tweak it to your own particular preferences, which is great. So yeah, what can I say? It has a bit of an issue if you're on 433 because there is a bit of noise there, so it's probably not the camera for you if you're going to fly long distances. Okay, now you'll notice the audio is a bit different here because I'm going to do a spectral analysis of this camera and I don't want my wireless microphone upsetting things, and I can't find my wired microphone, so I'm just using the camera's inbuilt microphone. And what I'm going to do here is, as you can see, I have the camera sitting just here by the antenna on the spectrum analyzer. I've got it to full span, which means it's going to look at from 0 through to 3.3 gigahertz. We'll plug this in and we'll see what happens. And we should see some noise. There we go. We've got some noise down here. So let's go down and see what the frequency of that noise is. I'll just get my marker going here. And okay, so we've got some noise down there at 462 megahertz. That's interesting. Bit of noise at 460, which is UHF, of course, or close to UHF. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change my span. We're going to look at it at a more narrow part of the, let's get into 100 megahertz,
Let's change our frequency to 400 and something megahertz. We should see, there we go, 450. So here is, let's move our marker again, move our marker across to here. So there's the little clump of noise. I'm actually just going to make it a bit wider so we can see some. Let's go to 500 megahertz. You can see that little clump of noise there, and it seems to vary from, if I use my marker, it's from about, where are we, where's my marker frequency, 390 through to 480. And at the peak, what have we got here? It's actually not a lot though. It's actually quite a low level of noise. If I take off the power, here we go from minus 125 to minus 111. So it's about 10 decibels of noise at very close range. So I'm not too worried about that in terms of the emission. It's pretty low actually. It may affect a UHF system. In fact, what we'll do is let's plug in an HS1177 and see how that compares. Here we go, brand new HS1177. It's actually a Foxeer version. I'm going to power it up and let's see what the output of that is on exactly the same piece of the band. Oh, that's deadly quiet, isn't it? There's no noise. So the Runcam Eagle is a bit more noisy. Let's go actually to the full band again and see what the whole thing looks like. So I'm going to power off. In fact, there's virtually nothing comes out of this camera, is there? It's deadly quiet. It is a deadly quiet camera. There's no noise at all. If I bring it right up close, you can see, holding it right by the antenna, we get a little bit of noise, but no. So certainly, if you're flying UHF, the Eagle may be a bit of something to be careful of.
Not so much of a problem on the band used by Crossfire and the 868 or whatever it is band, because it seemed pretty quiet up there. In fact, down at 430 megs was about the only place it made any noise, which is quite good. So yep, it's going to be a great camera for everybody else though that uses 5.8 gigahertz for their video and 2.4 gig for their RC signals, because oh man, I just can't say enough about the way it flies, the light handling. It's just brilliant. It's fantastic. So yeah, run don't walk to buy one of these. And if you don't know which one to get, the 16.9 or the 4.3, as I'll just go over it again, if you are flying a mini quad, then it doesn't matter what kind of goggles or display you use, go for the 4.3 because it'll give you the necessary field of view in the vertical plane. Necessarily, you'll be able to see the horizon while you've got a reasonable amount of camera tilt on, and then when you come into land, you'll still be able to see the horizon when you're sitting level. That's really important. If you're flying fixed wing, then you probably, if you've got a 4.3 glasses, then get 4.3 camera. If you've got 16.9 glasses, then go for the 16.9 camera and you'll get a really good view of the world. It's quite fantastic. It really is good. You know, you until the video footage that I've taken doesn't do it justice because you lose so much in the DVR footage and the compression and so forth. But hey, there you go. If you've got one of these cameras or if you have any questions, then please ask in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. In the meantime, I'm hoping it's going to be fine this weekend. I'll try and get some really good footage under a range of various lighting conditions because it's spring here. We get all sorts of like 4 seasons in a day, and I'll put that footage up so you can see what it looks like. In the meantime, as I say, I've just put some bits of footage up I've taken over the past couple of days when I've had an opportunity, and you can get a bit of an idea from that. There you go. Thank you for watching. In the meantime, bye for now. One thing I just noticed, which I think Runcam could do something about, is there is no external marking on the cameras to tell you which one's 16.9 and which one is 4.3. The one on the right here is 16.9, the one on the left is 4.3, and they, to all intents and purposes, appear identical once you take them out of the box. So if you're going to have a 16.9 and a 4.3, I suggest you mark one of them so that you know which is which. Otherwise, you could get awfully confused. And perhaps Runcam could just, I don't know, a little sticker or something, a little mark on there so that out of the box, you know, once you've taken it, unpacked it and got it laying around in your little hobby room, you know which one's which. And I've already forgotten. I'll have to review the footage.